Lady Death is the gripping memoir of Lyudmila Pavlichenko, the most lethal female sniper in history. Dive into the harrowing and heroic account of a young Soviet woman who became a legend during World War II with 309 confirmed kills. Let's begin. The weary warriors of the coastal army were greeted by the sight of a magnificent white city, unscarred by battle. It was unusually calm and peaceful here, with no artillery attacks or front lines with constant combat. Only occasionally did Nazi aircraft appear, but they had not inflicted on Sevastopol the heavy damage seen at Odessa. In the rays of the warm Crimean sun, its shady streets, parks slightly touched by autumnal color, and public gardens with luxuriant flower beds gladdened the eye with their festive and completely pre-war appearance and the brightness of their colors. The city was spread out over the shores of several bays, and the entrance to the main one was protected by two ancient forts, the Constantine and the Mikhail. Their great white stone walls with embrasures were reflected in the waters of the harbor. On the top of Central Hill shone the blue dome of the Cathedral of Antithesis, Saint Vladimir, the burial vault of 4 admirals, heroes of the city's first siege. Amidst the winding lanes of History Boulevard stood monuments to the fallen warriors of the 4th Bastion, the Yazenov Redoubt, and the Kostomarov Battery, as well as the multi-figured bronze memorial to General Totleben and his brave sappers, who successfully waged a subterranean struggle against the British, French, and Italian forces that besieged Sevastopol in 1854. I had never been here before. After the bustle, variety, and many features of Odessa, whose population numbered over 600,000, Sevastopol seemed small and provincial. In Odessa, the rhythm of life was set by a large commercial seaport that hosted dozens of ships from different countries of the world. Foreign passenger liners, cargo ships, or tankers could not even approach this, the main naval base of the Black Sea Fleet. Only the narrow gray hulks of Soviet destroyers, minesweepers, and patrol boats occupied the quays of South Bay or awaited repairs by the piers of the Sergo-Ordzhonikidze naval works. In some unfathomable way, the heroic past still suffused the character of modern Sevastopol, its residents, their habits and customs. That appealed to me. The city presented itself not as a jaunty mariner disembarked from the deck of an ocean-going merchantman, as in Odessa, but as a stern warrior gripping his weapon and gazing into the distance. On the southern borders of our homeland, he stood as a permanent sentry, responsible for the peace and security of his native land. The people of Sevastopol greeted the defenders of Odessa hospitably. There were many wounded on the ships of our convoy, up to 3,000. They were immediately put in hospitals located in various districts, in Holland Bay, in Strelets Bay, in Benrim, in Balaklava, and in the city hospitals. A place was found for me and other patients of the 47th Medical Battalion in a small infirmary in Strelets Bay. My regimental mates, who needed rest rather than treatment, were taken to Historic Boulevard in the center of the city. The main forces of the coastal army were located in Korabelnaya Storona, the major part in the grounds of the anti-aircraft gunnery college. Personnel were dispatched to public baths, had their linen and uniforms changed, and were fed in the canteen. 500 g of bread were distributed per person. This period of rest was most appreciated by those who had left the battlefield just 2 days earlier. the Chapayevs hoped they would be allowed to rest for at least a week. Their wishes were not answered. By October 21st, our division had already been loaded onto a train at the railway station and dispatched to the north of the Crimean Peninsula to stop the German advance on the Ishun lines. I remained in Sevastopol, as my head wound had not healed. It was rebandaged every 2 days, and the medic promised to take the stitches out soon. Despite this, I got permission to go out on us half-hour walks down to the sea. Then, when the stitches were removed and I was transferred to a battalion of recuperating patients based at the Black Sea Fleet crew premises, I was able to request leave to go into the city. The leave pass was given to me by Major N. Kubetjev, a jovial and talkative man. When I introduced myself, he took an interest in my award, the inscribed sniper rifle, and offered me a transfer from the 25th, which was now located heaven knew where, to the naval infantry, promising me the rank of principal sergeant major, and assuring me that the Black Sea sailor's pea jacket with brass buttons would suit me incomparably better than my khaki-colored infantry tunic. He extolled his friends among the leadership, Captain Lvovsky in the 16th Naval Infantry Battalion, Senior Lieutenant Onshur in the 17th, Captain Yegorov in the 18th, and Captain Chernusov in the 19th Battalion. However, the naval infantry did not seem to me to be any better than the ordinary terrestrial infantry. I had become strongly attached to the Stepan Razin Rifle Regiment, having been through the epic saga of Odessa with them. In war, anything can happen. A regiment is not a needle in a haystack. It was bound to turn up somewhere, along with the whole coastal army, which, having retreated from the Ishun lines under pressure from the Fritzes, was now breaking through to the main naval base of the Black Sea Fleet along dirt roads through the southern Crimean range. Having gotten out of the barracks and into the city, I strolled around on my own and took pleasure in its peaceful appearance. The trams were running around the city ring, and the shops, cafeterias, public baths, hairdressers, and various services, metalwork, tailoring, shoe repairs were open. True, Sevastopol, which had a population of over 100,000 before the war, now looked empty. Many of its residents, especially those with children, had been evacuated to the Caucasus and to Krasnodar territory. However, in the evenings, after the working day was over, the people of Sevastopol would dress up and go out to stroll along the marine or historic boulevards, visit the Lunacharsky, a city theater where plays were still staged as before, or the 3 cinemas, which showed the best pre-war Soviet films. Chapayev, the tractor drivers, in the enemy rear, Minin and Pozharsky, the little humpbacked horse, and others. First, I visited the cultural venues that were still open, the superb Black Sea Fleet Museum, situated in an ancient building with cannons by the entrance, and the panorama of a historic boulevard, the storming of Sevastopol, June the 6th, 1855, a work by the artist Franz Roubaud, which is remarkable for its realistic depiction and the force of its impact on viewers. I did not want to leave, so strong was the attraction of this work of art. It seemed as though time had gone backward, and you were really standing among the defenders of the Malakoff Heights. This brought to mind the thought that we now had to repeat the feat of our forebears and defend the city to the last drop of blood. Sevastopol, founded by an edict of Empress Catherine the Great also had a more ancient history. I took a tram out to Balaklava, a fishing settlement 12 kilometers from the city, to view the ruins of the Genoese fortress of Cimbalo, and I also visited Tauric Chersonesos, established as far back as the 5th century BC, where I saw the remains of the ancient Greek city, including the foundations of buildings, the basilica, an ancient theater, fortress towers, and walls forming a special area like a barbican for fighting enemy infantry that had broken through to the fortifications. I could do this because I had money of my own from 4 months of my soldier's pay. A serviceman in his first year of service got 10 rubles, 50 kopecks a month, a corporal sniper, 30 rubles, and a sergeant sniper and section commander, 35 rubles. I spent about 20 rubles on Vesna spring brand chocolates. To my surprise, they were being sold at the Sevastopol army store at the pre-war price. In the meantime, events in the Crimea were unfolding. On October 26, 1941, the German 11th Army, under the command of Colonel General Erich von Manstein, had made it onto the peninsula. 4 days later, on Thursday, October 30th, military action commenced on the more distant approaches to the main naval base of the Black Sea Fleet. The quadruple ordnance battery of the 54th Coastal Defenses opened fire on a column of German armored transports, troop carriers, motorcycles, and stuck 3 self-propelled guns moving along the road towards the harbor, the village of Nikolaevka. The column was halted by some accurate firing. This day is regarded as the start of the siege of Sevastopol. An order of October 30th, 1941, from the head of the city garrison, Rear Admiral G.V. Zhukov, was read out to us during the drill on the parade ground at the fleet crew premises. It began, "The enemy has broken through the front line. His advanced mechanized units have entered the Yevpatoria Saki district, threatening Sevastopol. Units of the Sevastopol garrison, operating in conjunction with ships and coastal artillery, must not allow the enemy into the main naval base and must annihilate him on the approaches to Sevastopol." The order mentioned the dispositions of our military units along the forward line from the village of Kamara to the estuary of the river Kak. On land, the defense was up to the 16 batteries of naval infantry, the militia, and other detachments located in the city at that moment. The order did not affect me, as I was registered, as before, in the 1st Battalion of the 54th Rifle Regiment, but nobody knew where it was located. Major Kubejev did not give me leave on that day and again offered a transfer to the naval infantry. Along with the other recuperating troops, I busied myself with tidying the grounds. I did not have time to regret this. In the afternoon, following dinner, 2 young assistants from the Naval Library turned up. They were on their usual weekly round of fleet units, collecting books they had issued to soldiers earlier and offering new ones. In an instant, a crowd gathered around them. The troops were exchanging books, chatting with the girls about what they had read, and putting in requests. I borrowed a tattered booklet in a soft cover with a colored drawing depicting the 4th Bastion in 1854, a big cannon on a gun carriage with small wheels, some soldiers, and an officer next to it. Above the picture was the name of the author, Leo Tolstoy, and the title, Sevastopol Sketches. There were books by other writers too, Chernyshevsky, Chekhov, Alexei Tolstoy, Sholokov, Maxim Gorky, But Leo Tolstoy enjoyed much greater demand. It was a long time since my hands had held a book, the student's faithful companion. I had had to forget about them since I donned a uniform and became a Red Army soldier in the 25th Chapayev Division. Books had been left behind in my pre-war life, and now they reminded me of peace, stability, and modern comforts. Not without some excitement, I opened the cover. I had read Sevastopol sketches, of course, but a very long time ago, probably as a child. One of the library girls began to talk to me about the work. She warmly recommended it, saying it was interesting and quite relevant to the current scene. I agreed with her. Not even 100 years had passed, and new conquerors were now approaching the legendary city with the same intentions. Reading helped to pass the time. As a participant in the first defense of the city, young artillery lieutenant Count Tolstoy knew what he was talking about when he described military action. In my younger years, I had probably failed to appreciate how accurate the great writer was in his psychological detail. But now, as I recalled the battle for Odessa, I was amazed at the perceptiveness with which he conveyed the feelings of a man who is sensing mortal danger in combat for the first time. The long whistle of a cannonball or shell while you are climbing the hill will have an unpleasant impact. You will suddenly realize, and in quite a different way from before, the significance of those shots which you heard in the city. Some quietly joyous recollection will suddenly flash up in your imagination. Your own person will begin to occupy you more than your observations. Your attention to everything around will diminish, and a sort of unpleasant feeling of indecisiveness suddenly overpowers you, despite this ignoble voice which has suddenly spoken up within you at the sight of danger, and especially if you have looked at the soldier who trots past you with a laugh, waving his arms and sliding down the hill across the liquid mud. You force yourself to silence this voice, unwittingly thrust out your chest and raise your head higher. Tolstoy drew vivid portraits of his comrades in arms, the soldiers and officers of the Russian Imperial Army who were fighting back then on the bastions. It is as if he brought these heroes closer to us by making their thoughts, dreams, and actions comprehensible. I do not think that anyone before him spoke so convincingly of the sources of the Russian warrior spirit. It is even highly possible that out of vanity, or simply for pleasure, a naval officer will want to do a bit of firing in your presence, to order the gunner and crew to the cannon. And in a lively and cheerful fashion, about 14 sailors, some thrusting their pipes into their pockets, others chewing the last fragments of a crust, their metal-capped boots wrapping the platform, will go up to the cannon and load it. Take a look at the faces, the bearing, the movements of these men. In every wrinkle of each sun-tanned, broad-cheeked face, in every muscle, in the breadth of these shoulders, in the girth of the legs shod in enormous boots, in every movement, calm, firm, unhurried. You can see those principal traits that make up the strength of the Russian, simplicity and stubbornness. But here on every face, it seems to you that, apart from those hallmarks, the danger, malice, and suffering of war have also laid down traces of an awareness of their own dignity and of lofty thought and feeling. I was also drawn to Tolstoy's description of Sevastopol's scenery and weather and the local place names: Severnaya Storona, Korobelnaya Storona, Malakov Kurgan, Sapun Gora, Mikkenzievi Gori, Sukharnaya Balka, Martinov Ovrag, Rechka Chornaya, Pavlovsky Misuk, and Kulikovo Polye. Until now, I had operated on flat steppe landscapes where visibility was generally excellent and the distances to the target were easily determined. Then, target shooting in the hills was a completely different matter. On the morning of November 4th, 1941, Major Kubejev gave me some good news. The commander of the Coastal Army, General Petrov, had arrived in Sevastopol yesterday, along with his headquarters staff, and was lodged at the Coastal Defense Command post at the Chersonis barracks. I decided to obtain a meeting with him, but it was not easy for a sergeant to approach a general. I was helped by the fact that his adjutant recognized me. Petrov looked to me the same as ever, spruce and energetic. The white dust of the Crimean roads had settled on his jacket with its general's stars on the tabs. A brown cavalry harness with a belt and 2 shoulder straps firmly gripped his lean figure, and the holster of the Korovin pistol, which was issued to senior commanders, had been noticeably moved to his right-hand side. As usual, Petrov held a riding crop in his hands, even though it was in a vehicle that he toured the firing lines, acquainting himself with the military units that occupied them, and viewing the sights and the military engineering works. The commander stopped as he got out of a Gorky-produced Gaz M1 car. I strode towards him, stood at attention, and announced myself. Sergeant Pavlichenko, Comrade Major General. Permission to speak. Greetings, Lyudmila, he smiled. How are you feeling? Excellent, Comrade Major General. So, are we going to beat the Nazis in Sevastopol? Absolutely, Comrade Major General. I have to inform you that you are now a senior sergeant and will command a sniper platoon. Petrov removed his pince-nez and wiped it with a snow-white handkerchief. When the reinforcement drafting takes place, select some most suitable personnel and teach them the skills of sharpshooting. Yes, Major General, I responded cheerfully, and lowering my voice, asked with concern, "But where is my regiment, Ivan Yefimovich?" "I think the Razins are on the road between Yalta and Gurzov. They'll be in some Sevastopol in 5 days. Will you wait for them?" "Yes, comrade. Major General, since my earliest days of service, my heart has been with the 1st Battalion of Captain Sergenko and my beloved 2nd Company. I admire your dedication to the army." Petrov smiled again. In accordance with orders from the commander of the Coastal Army, all the necessary documents were prepared for me at the staff headquarters, and I was issued an authorization for the regiment and the quartermaster. I had to acquire various components of the winter uniform. For example, a cap with ear flaps, a padded jacket, and warm underwear. It was with special pleasure that I attached to the tabs of my tunic the 3 dark ruby triangles denoting my new military rank of senior sergeant. Apart from that, I was entitled to a leather belt with a shoulder strap, a single-pin brass buckle, and a holster with a ramrod to accommodate a pistol. I never subsequently parted with this firearm, the Tula Tokarev, given to me in Sevastopol. I had it with me in snipers' hideouts, on leave in the city, and, of course, on parade. Following evacuation, it accompanied me to Novorossiysk and then to Moscow. The TT became my talisman. While hunting for fritzes in the Crimean forest, I relied, in the event of failure, not so much on the grenade, which always hung from my belt, but on my totosha, as we called the Tokarev pistol in the army. Neither the Russians nor the Germans took snipers prisoner, but shot them directly on the spot. For women there was another variation, death preceded by gang rape. Therefore, the grenade was for rolling under the enemy's feet. 7 bullets from the TT were for anyone who came too close, and the 8th was for myself. I do not deny that a pistol weighing 825 grams without its 8-cartridge magazine is somewhat heavy for a woman's hand. Some even reproached the Russian engineer Tokarev because his weapon was too similar to the invention of the pistol king John Moses Browning, especially the Belgian-produced 1903 model. But is it for those of us concerned with practical shooting to listen to theoreticians' disputes remote from real life? The most important thing was that the TT met all the demands of the front line. A powerful 7.62 mm caliber cartridge, which could penetrate a brick wall 100 mm thick, a sturdy barrel, a reliable trigger mechanism, and a conveniently shaped butt. This concludes the 8th part of the story. Thank you very much for listening. What do you think of Pavlichenko's story? Please subscribe for more episodes and leave a comment.